Chapter 13 of Deadwood Dick. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Deadwood Dick's Doom, or Calamity Jane's Last Adventure, by Edward L. Wheeler. Chapter 13. Two Sensations. Several days passed thereafter, without any incident worthy of mention. Mrs. Morris remained at the poker-house in Death Notch, anxiously awaiting, from the unknown, tidings of her lost daughter. Calamity kept her company most of the time, and did much to cheer and comfort her. Not a glimpse had been caught of Carroll Carner since his departure at the order of the girl sport, and it was hoped that he had cleared out for good. On the fourth morning after the night of the old scavenger's death, the town of Death Notch was "billed like a sarcus," as one miner remarked. Posters, hand-printed, were stuck up in every conspicuous place, and, what was more, they were the proclamations of two separate parties, each having a different subject to unfold to the gaping assemblage that swarmed forth to read them. First, and most important to the average citizen, was a poster concerning themselves, which read thus: "Notice: To the pale-faced dogs who drove Red Hatchet and his tribe from the town of Sequoia, which the government had given him warning, is given that unless they fly at once their own pale-face country, their scalps shall hang upon the lodge-pole of Dancing Plume, chief of the Apaches." The meaning was plain enough, but the rough men of Death Notch did not take any stock in it. More than one threat had been thus hurled at them by Red Hatchet, but had not been executed. What reason had they to believe that this one would be? The other poster was framed in language more familiar, and ran: "Notice: To every man, female, and cherub within their classic precincts of Death Notch, on their morrow at sunrise, I, William Henry Shakespeare, shall expose at public auction, from on top of Pictor Rock, nigh your town, their following property, terwith one purty piece of humanity, other feminern gentler, age about 20, good sound teeth, travels purty good jog, sired by a California chap, warranted gentle and good lurkin, found astray in their mountains, and will be sold to their highest bidder ter defray expenses of keeping and transportating, dog-goned good bargainin'. Purty as a new wax figger, jest like an angel, but leetle bigger, sweet as blazes, bet your life. Chance for pilgrims to git a wife. A big attendance is desire. William H. Shakespeare, auctioneer." This created more of a sensation than Dancing Plume's proclamation. Calamity read it, and at once communicated the news to Mrs. Morris. "It's your best chance to git back your gal," she said. "The one who bids most gits her. But I can do nothing. I have but $100 with me, and it is more than probable that some ruffian would bid above that sum, to get my poor child in his power," Mrs. Morris answered, in deep distress. "Oh dear, what can I do?" "Well, we'll see," Calamity said meditatively. "There's allus more'n one way out of the woods, and we'll work it somehow. I don't happen to be over flush with bits myself, or I might add a little to your pile. I'll go out and skirmish, and see what I can find, for we must be prepared to bid smart to-morrow." She went downstairs, and for a wonder found Poker Jack the only inmate of the bar-room. He was seated tipped back in an easy-chair, engaged in reading, but looked up with a nod. "Pleasant morning, Calamity," he saluted. "Quite a sensation stirred up again, eh, to break the monotony?" "So it seems, Jack. I allow I did you a square deal when you were in trouble once, up in Deadwood, didn't I?" "You bet ye did, Calamity, and I've always remembered it, because I'd been subject to a funeral expense but for you. Well, I was handy to help you, and considered you deserved it. And now, if I were to ask a favor of you, what would you say?" "I'd grant it in a minute, old friend. You have but to name it." "Well, I'll tell you what I want. I want money to bid of Mrs. Morris's daughter to-morrow." Then she went on and explained the circumstances already known to the reader. Jack listened a few moments, and then scratched his curly head. "Well, "I allow I can do a little toward remedying the difficulty," he announced. "Let the girl go for what she will, I'll get her. Mrs. Morris can bid as high as her pile goes, and I'll take care of all above it." CHAPTER 14